Good day, everyone. Now let's talk about an important topic. Topic 3.1: Assessing Model Performance. In this section, we'll explore the key metrics used to evaluate how well a model is performing. So let's do a quick recap. When training a model, you typically split your dataset into two or three segments. For simplicity, let's first think about two segments. The diagram shows um, three um, three segments, but I'll explain them step by step to make it clear. Okay, for the training data, when training a model, you use training data. This is what the model sees and learns from. It forms the foundation of the model's knowledge. However, how do we know if the model is truly learning or how the model is truly learning useful patterns rather than just memorizing the training data? This is important because a model might perform exceptionally well on the training data, but but it will fail when faced with new unseen data. This issue is known as overfitting, which we will discuss in more detail later. For validation data, to to address this overfitting, so we introduce a validation dataset. So this dataset helps evaluate how well the model is or how the model is learning during training. In in frameworks like PyTorch, you often see validation loss and validation accuracy. After each epoch, these metrics give an indication of how well the model generalizes to unseen data before it's officially tested. For test dataset or test data, so you will often hear people use validation and tests interchangeably, and I sometimes do so. However, there's a key distinction regarding test and validation. So the validation set helps fine tune the model during training, while the test dataset is a completely separate dataset. You will use it to evaluate the final model after training is complete. In some cases, especially in competitions like those on Kaggle, people split the dataset into just train and test without a separate validation set. But ideally, if you have enough data, it's best to have all three: the training set, validation set, and the test set. So again, training set, the data the model learns from; validation set, used to tune the model and check for overfitting; test set, used for the final evaluation to see how well the model performs on completely new data. Understanding these splits is key to building models that generalize well the real world scenarios. Okay, so let's take a look at an example of the training process shown here. During each epoch, we pass all the images to the network using forward propagation, calculate the loss, and then use the back propagation with gradient descent to optimize the weights. This process happens for each epochs. After training, we evaluate we evaluate the model on the validation dataset to get the loss and accuracy, helping us understand how well the model is performing at that point. We repeat this for multiple of epochs, epoch 1, epoch 2, epoch 3, and so on, up to epoch n. Typically, this can be around 50 epochs, but it depends on various factors such as the complexity of the model, the data size, the dataset size, and the amount of time you're willing to devote to training. And finally, after completing all the epochs, we test the model. We test the model on the unseen test dataset to get the final loss and accuracy. And this is considered best practice to evaluate how well the model generalize the new unseen data. So let's take a look at some of the basic performance metrics we use. So one of the key metrics is training loss, which is used during back propagation. So back propagation uses the training loss to update the gradients by applying the chain rule, propagating the errors from right to left across the network during training. Next, we have training accuracy. So, training accuracy tells us how well the model is performing on the training dataset, and essentially how many of the training categories the model correctly classifies during the training process. In addition, we also monitor the validation or test loss and accuracy. So, validation or test, or it can be interchanged, no? Validation or test measures how well the model performs on unseen data during validation, while validation accuracy indicates how many predictions the model gets right on this unseen data. So these are the key metrics we use to evaluate model performance. So they help us understand how well the model is learning and generalizing beyond the training dataset. So let's take a look at something interesting here. What what if our handwritten digit model struggles to distinguish between eights and threes? For example, in this case, the actual label is an 8, but the model predicts as 3. And here's another example where the actual label is 8, but the model predicts it as a 3 again. To be fair, this prediction might not be entirely unreasonable. Maybe the maybe the pen skip a bit, making the 8 look like a 3. But regardless, these kinds of errors shown that the model is confusing certain classes. So, how do we identify these problems? How can we determine which classes are performing the worst and which ones are doing well? Can we rely on the overall accuracy or the training metrics we've seen before? No, we can't. To diagnose these kinds of issues, we need tools like the confusion matrix and the classification report. So these tools help us dive deeper into the model's performance by showing where it's making specific errors and which classes it's struggling with the most. Okay, so today we will talk about the confusion matrix and the classification report. These are the two essential for analyzing the performance of a classification model. As I mentioned earlier, that the confusion matrix is used for classification models where the outputs are categorical, not continuous values like in regression models. It's typically applied to the test dataset, although you can also use it on the training dataset. However, running it on the training data is usually less informative. You want to assess the model's performance on unseen data, which is where the test dataset comes in. And generating a confusion matrix is quite simple with using scikit-learn. So you can import it like this. So from scikit-learn metrics, dot metrics, import confusion matrix. So the confusion matrix function takes a two input arguments. So the ground truth labels. So they are the actual test labels, often referred to as y test. Sometimes y test. And the other one is the predicted labels. These are the predictions generated when you pass. Example here is, let's say, y underscore pred. Let me write it here. Sometimes it should be like this. So predicted labels y pred. The other one is y test for ground truth. No? And this one is for predicted labels here. With these two inputs, the confusion matrix provides a clear breakdown on how well your model is classifying the data. Here's a confusion matrix. It looks like a bit confusing, but how do these numbers actually mean? First, ignore this color bar here, and we'll get to that shortly. So, what I want you to focus on first are the axes. So, on the top, we have the predicted labels, and on the right, we have the true labels, also known as the ground truth labels. So, why do we see a diagonal of large number running through the confusion matrix? So it's actually quite simple. So let's look at the top corner, 973. So this means that the model predicts or predicted class 0 correctly 973 times when the actual level was indeed 0. So to put this in perspective, so we fed the model test image that were actually zeros, and the model correctly predicted 0 973, 973 times. And by times, I mean instances. Because remember, our test dataset had 10,000 10,000 images. Since there are 10 possible classes from digits from 0 to 9. So we can assume that each classes has roughly 1,000 images, although the distribution may not be perfectly even. So, now, what about the numbers, the other numbers? So look at the number near the corner, like the 2 here. It tells us that when the actual label was 0, the the model mistakenly predicted 2 times. Similarly, sometimes it predicts the digits as a 5, 6, 7, or even an 8 when it was actually a 0. So this breakdown helps us identify where our model is weak. The large diagonal running through the matrix is desirable because it shows where the models made correct predictions. So let's examine another sample. Look at the 884 in the matrix here. This means that when the ground truth was 5, the model correctly predicted 5 as a 5 of total of 884 times. Well, which is great, but if you look at the red bar, you'll notice that the model also predicted as 5 as 0 twice, and also 3 and also here 3 3 times, and so on. So what's the takeaway? The confusion matrix gives us a detailed breakdown of the model's strengths and weakness. If any of this seems confusing, don't worry, just go through the lesson again and it will start to make sense. All right, so let's take a closer look at this. So what are the main issues we can identify from a model's performance? The first thing to do is analyze the large values that, well, that that aren't on the diagonal. So for example, look at the values 9 here and 7. So what does this tell us? It indicates that the model is confusing certain classes. In this case, it's predicting um it's predicting example here as, let's say, it predicts 9, though the true labels here is 4. And instead of 7, it predicts 2. So this kind of analysis helps us identify weakness in the model by understanding what the model is good at and where it struggles, so we can figure out how to strengthen and improve its performance. Before we dive into more detailed matrix, so let's start by looking at a simple binary classification problem. In this scenario, we have a classifier that predicts whether a patient has a disease based on an X-ray scan. Since this is a binary classification problem, so there are 4 possible outcomes. So we have the true negatives, TN. So the model correctly predicted no, and the patients did not have the disease. False negatives, FN. So the model predicted no, but the patient actually had the disease. So this is a serious error in medical context. False positives or FP, the model predicted yes, but the patient did not have the disease. So in this case, the model falsely identified a healthy patient having the disease. And next is true positives or TP. So the model correctly predicted yes, and the patient did indeed have the disease. So now, take a look at this confusion matrix for the binary classification problem. So the columns represents the model's prediction. So predicted no and predicted yes, while the rows show the actual ground truth labels no and yes. So again, let's break it down. The model correctly predicted no for 40 cases. So these are the true negatives. There were five false positives here where the model misidentifying the disease. So the model produced 10 false negatives, FN, incorrectly predicting the 10 patients had no disease. Finally, we have 90 true positives, so TP here. So where the model correctly identified patients with the disease. So what can we deduce from this? So to avoid confusion, here's a quick note. The total values of the right represents the sum of actual cases. So the 45 patients did not have the disease, while the patients actually had the disease. Similarly, the column shows the model's prediction. So the model predicts the model predicted 50 people as not having the disease, and the other, it predicted 95 people as having the disease. So right now we need to calculate the accuracy. So accuracy is calculated as true positives plus true negatives over the number of and the total number of example for this one, no, 145. So the data here, the number or the total number of the data. So right now, so true positive is 90 plus 40 over 145 is equal to we have 0.89 0.897 or 89.7%. So the model's accuracy is well approximately 89.7%, which is good, which is a good baseline metric for evaluating the performance. However, as we've seen before, accuracy doesn't always give us the full picture. So what about the misclassification rate? So the misclassification rate, well, it's also known as error rate. So it is simply 1 minus the accuracy. So right now we have 10.3% as our misclassification or error rate. So this means that the model misclassified about 10.3% of the samples. So, so the model shows 89.7% accuracy, but still misclassifies around 10.3% of the cases. So while accuracy is a helpful baseline metric, it's important to explore other metrics like precision, recall, and F1 score for a deeper understanding of model performance. Okay, so now let's explore more some other key metrics. So first is we have true positive rate, TPR, or sensitivity or recall. So the true positive rate, also known as well sensitivity or recall, is a critical metric, especially in cases like disease detection, where missing a positive case can be dangerous. So what does it tells us? So it answers the questions when the actual label is yes or positive, how often does the model correctly predicted yes? So in this case, we have 90%. So the model correctly predicts 90% of the positive cases. This means that when a patient has the disease, the model detects it correctly 90% of the time. However, it also indicates that the model misses 10% of positive cases, which is a potential concern in high stakes scenarios like disease diagnosis. Next is we have false positive rate or FPR. So the false positive rate tells us when the actual label is no or negative, how often data or how often does the model incorrectly predicted yes. So this is an important metric because a high FPR means that the model is producing too many false alarms. In this case, we have 11%. The false positive the false positive rate is 11% means that 11% of the negative cases were misclassified as positive. If this number were higher, it would indicate that the model frequently produces false positives, which could lead to unnecessary anxiety and additional testing for patients. Next is we have true negative rate or specificity. So we have TN or the true negatives over true negatives labels. So the true negative rate or TNR answers the questions when the actual label is no, how often does the model correctly predicted no? TNR is crucial when you want to minimize these false positives. So in this case, the model correctly predicts 89% of the negative cases. This means that when the patient does not have the disease, the model identifies it correctly 89% of the time. So, why are these metrics important? Example for recall. Um, recall is critical when missing a positive case has serious consequences. Like example for that is undiagnosed disease. Next is for false positive rate. Well, important in reducing false alarm and ensuring that positive predictions are reliable. And for the true negative rate, vital in ensuring the negative predictions are accurate. avoiding unnecessary interventions or anxiety. For example, here is for a real world analogy. Imagine you're taking a COVID-19 test. So if in case for recall, so it tells you how often the test correctly identifies infected individuals. For FPR, it tells you how often the test incorrectly flags healthy individuals as infected. And for the TNR, it tells you how reliable a negative result is, how often a no actually means no. So in summary here, so we have 90% recall, we have FPR 11%, and we have TNR as 89%. So these are essential metrics when evaluating the performance of classification models, especially in high stakes environment like healthcare. Okay, now let's take a look at precision. Precision is another important metric that tells us when the model predicts yes, how often it is correct. So this is the formula. So true positives, then the total predicted yes. Okay, so for this example, we have out of the 95 predictions we have here where the model said that the patient has the disease, so it was correct 90 times. So this means 95% of the time when the model predicts yes, it is actually correct. So why precision is important? So precision is a crucial metric, especially in scenarios where false positives can lead to unnecessary anxiety or costly follow-up procedures. For example, in a medical diagnosis scenario, so if the model predicts that a patient has a disease and is wrong, it might lead to um, unnecessary treatments, additional testing, increased healthcare costs. By maintaining a high precision of 95%, so the model minimizes these types of errors. So in summary, we have precision 95%. Well, this is a precision is a great metric to assess how reliable the model's positive predictions are. If prediction is high, I know. If the precision is high, you can trust the model more when it predicts a positive result. However, precision alone doesn't give the complete picture. So you will also want to balance it with another metrics like recall to fully assess your model's performance. Okay, so this is a summary of important metrics. So precision, recall, and also we have F1 score here. So we have already covered precision and recall, but now let's introduce a new metric, the F1 score. So what is the F1 score? So the F1 score is the harmonic mean of precision and recall. Combining both into a single metric, it provides a balanced score that considers both precision. So precision is how often is a predicted yes actually correct, and recall through positive rate or sensitivity when it's a yes. So how often do we predict yes? So this is the formula for F1 score. So why F1 score is important, F1 score is especially useful when you need to balance precision and recall, particularly in cases where, example here is if you have high recall with low precision is acceptable. Like example for that is like in disease detection. But high precision with low recall may lead to misdetections, no, or misclassifications. So remember, high recall with low precision is acceptable, and high precision with low recall may lead to misclassifications or misdetections. Okay, for recap, precision and recall. So recall or true positive rate or sensitivity. So when it's actually yes, how often does the model predict yes? And it measures how good the classifier is at identifying all positive instances. For precisions, for precision, when the model predicts yes, how hop, how often is it correct? No? And well, it measures the reliability of the positive predictions. Well, okay, trade-offs between precision and recall in real-world scenarios, there are often a trade-off between precision and recall. So example here is, let's say the COVID-19 testing. So in the case of COVID-19 testing, it's crucial to identify as many infected individuals as possible. So high recall is prioritized. Well, no, if you want to, if you want to check the when in the case of COVID-19 testing, so well, it's crucial to identify as many infected individuals as possible. That's why it needs or it prioritizes the high recall here to minimize the risk of sending infected individuals back into the community. So this means we are willing to accept more false positives, example, people wrongly identified as positive, to ensure we don't miss anyone who actually has the disease. So for the key insight here is in situations where missing a positive case carries a high cost, such as spreading a contagious disease. So high recall is preferred, even if it comes at the expense of precision. However, for applications where false positives are costly, example like fraud detection, high precision might be the priority. So in summary, precision and recall and F1 score provide a more comprehensive view of model performance. Understanding the trade-offs between these metrics help in choosing the right balance based on the specific problem at hand. All right, so understanding the classification reports. So now let's take a look at classification reports here. So we have a classification report provides a summary of key performance metrics, including precision, recall, F1 score, and support. So precision, so it is how often are positive predictions correct. Recall is how often are actual positives correctly identified. And F1 score is the harmonic mean of precision and recall, offering a balanced measure. Support is the number of occurrences of each class in the dataset. So what is support, no, by the way? So support simply refers to how many instances of each class are present in the dataset. While it's not necessarily a critical performance, it helps provide context for interpreting precision and recall. and also the F1 score, especially when dealing with imbalanced datasets. For analyzing the MNIST dataset, MNIST digit classifier here for MNIST, for the MNIST, no, the classification report shows that we are achieving a high precision, recall, and F1 score for all or across all classes. So this indicates that the model is performing well. So, well, as you can see, for good performance, so high scores across all metrics suggest that the model is classifying digits accurately. But in real world scenario, so however in real world data sets, the performance is rarely this consistent. So you may encounter situations where some classes perform exceptionally well, other classes may perform poorly, often due to class imbalance or noisy data. So why is a classification report useful? So a classification report is a powerful tool that helps you evaluate model performance on a per class basis. Identify potential weakness by comparing precision, recall for each class. It especially helpful when analyzing imbalanced data set where certain classes may dominate the predictions. Okay, so for well, next steps is generating a classification report and confusion matrix. So now let's move ahead and train the MNIST model as we've done before. So this time we will also generate a classification report, create a confusion matrix using PyTorch to visualize how well the model is performing all across classes. So we will check the Google Drive, and we will have a PyTorch IPython notebook, or in our Google Colab notebook here, no, for this lesson. So stay tuned.